one of the most important aspects of a real estate investment strategy is your exit strategy. Hello, welcome to the latest episode of the Real James Rondon Podcast. Today's episode, we're going to talk about investment strategies, real estate investment strategies. And one of the most important aspects of a real estate investment strategy is your exit strategies. What I mean by that is you want to know how you're going to be able to get your money back, or how you're going to be able to get out, or what you're really going to be able to do with this property. And a really good property will give you a multitude of options. For example, there's some properties that might be on the more expensive side. Maybe they'll have a little more of an upfront cost. Maybe even they'll have a higher total cost, total investment cost. And maybe at the end of the day, you're really only looking at being able to fix and flip that property because maybe you can't necessarily hold that one because of the rents. Maybe you don't want to end up renting it out. But just want to deal with what exit strategies are and how to pursue a real estate investment and what to look for up front. Number one, if you're looking at a property and a good deal comes around and you want to pursue it, one of the first exit strategies could be that you you wholesale the property or assign the contract. I don't like to do this unless I'm actually willing to close on the property. There are a lot of people out there that are doing wholesaling. They'll try to find a deal and they try to find an investor, and then they try to make some money on the in-between. They try to sell their contract. That's fine. However, I don't like these situations where people do that. They tie up people's properties and they end up not being able to close themselves. They can't find an investor to resell their contract to, and then they end up leaving the seller high and dry. That's a big no-no to me. I don't like that. I don't do that. If I put a contract together, I'm going to close on that purchase. But when you do buy a property, if you find a real good real estate investment, there are times where you could do that. Maybe you say, you know what, I've got a couple of other investors that I know of that might want this more than me. Maybe I don't have time to do the work on it. Maybe I just want to make a little money and move on to the next project. That's definitely a possibility, but you don't want to be having that as your only strategy. Like I said, you want to be able to close on the purchase. So that's the second exit strategy would be to buy the property and then to either flip it or to either hold on to it as a rental. And you could do a couple of different types of rentals, obviously. You could do a long-term rental, or you can do short-term rentals where people do the whole Airbnb model. I'll talk about different types of rentals and the Airbnb model in another episode. And pros and cons, what you should steer away from, etc., etc. But when you're looking at buying and flipping, you've got a couple of options there. Some properties, if you buy them right, or if the situation stumbles into your lap, you may be able to buy it and then just sell it the way it is to another investor. That's a possibility. Sometimes you can go in and do a cleanup or maybe a very light remodel. Sometimes just a cleanup can put a lot of equity into a property or get you a lot of money back out of it. Other times, these situations where you come across good deals, a lot of times you're getting the good deals for a reason. Maybe there's a tenant in there that's difficult to deal with, or it needs just too much work that the seller isn't able to put into it. Sometimes dealing with those aspects can make it a lot more saleable for the the next person. They'll be more interested in it if they don't have to deal with the tenant, if they don't have to deal with the repairs. But you can do a light fix and flip. You can do a full-on fix and flip, full renovation and flip. Once you do that, you kind of limit yourself a little bit too, because if you start sticking higher quality materials into a home, you're putting granite in, you're putting stainless steel in for appliances, you're going, to the extra mile with it. Some of those properties you may not want to rent out because you've got equity built in there, and then also you're worried about maybe how somebody else might live in that property. I had one just not too long ago. We had bought it at a good price. We fixed it up. We were getting ready to flip it. The market was kind of wasn't a downward trend, but it was pretty flat at the time. This was maybe a year, 2 years ago. We were rolling into that fall winter market where things kind of slow down. And right at that same time, we could have sold it, but right at that same time, an opportunity presented itself to help somebody out and put them into it as a rental. We went ahead and did that. They lived in there for, it was almost 2 years, I believe. And then the house, when we gave it to them, was immaculate. Everything was done really well. Beautiful house. When they turned the keys back over to me, not so beautiful. We had to put a lot of money back into the house to get it, to where we could resell it. So, you got to be careful with that too. Sometimes you paint yourself into a corner, but if you know that there's enough margin when you're doing a full-on renovation to fix and flip the property, and some properties are just going to be better for that. If you've got enough margin, you've got enough room if you have to get out of the property. And getting out of the property, we can do a couple of different things. I'll talk to you about that just in a second. But so those are your options, your exit strategies, and you want to make sure you have those, and you want to make sure when you're walking into a new deal, when you're walking into one of these investment opportunities, that you look at all of these avenues. When you're looking at the other end, you want to be able to recoup your money. You want to make your profit. You either do that through a sale. You could do that through a refinance. You could refinance the property depending on how you purchased it. You could refinance it after it's all fixed up. Use the higher value and higher appraised value to then maybe be able to walk away with it with very little money into it, or maybe you get your money back or more money back on a refinance. That can happen and does happen. We call that the BRRR method. We'll deal with that more fully in another episode. But these are just some of the ways, the other thing too, obviously you sell the property. You can sell it, you can refinance it and hang on to it. Those are kind of your options once you acquire it. Long term, you gotta say, okay, what's the best for me in the short term? What's the best for me in the long term? But the best thing to do is to deal with these things up front and then say, what are my exit strategies here? And if you can get a property that you have all of those strategies, that's going to make it a lot easier for you as you continue to be an investor in real estate. One more thing just on the back end, just so you kind of put some of this even more together. I just had an opportunity present itself. A very good opportunity. It was an off-market property. They wanted close to $300,000 for it. There was a lot of equity still in it. When I looked at it, my exit strategies were limited because at the higher end, and that's not a high end, but it's a higher end. We're getting into a higher end in this market in southeastern Wisconsin and in Kenosha and Racine County. But with that property, to really adequately transform it and renovate it, I'd have to inject a lot of money into it because it would have been a higher end property, would have gotten me a lot more potentially when I went to resell it. But that type of property too, if I'd kind of be stuck with a fix and flip. I'd also, depending on how I purchased it, my costs would be pretty high. My renovation costs would be pretty high. My carrying costs would be pretty high. If there's a mortgage involved, my interest is going to rack up on something like that. So I'm looking at it, and also while there's a good market for sales for those properties, we are going into the fall and winter. The other thing is, as far as rentals, your rental market's more limited on this type of property. There's, you don't have as many people looking for something where the dollar amount for something like that would make sense. So that one I was kind of, okay, I either find another investor to pass it along to and I make a little money on it and I'm willing to close, or I end up buying it and full on renovating it, putting a lot of money into it, and really hoping the market doesn't change and then I'm able to find a buyer for it. So on that one, I looked at my exit strategies, looked at the big picture, said, for this particular property, for the price point, for everything that I would need to do, I don't feel like it works for me right now. So for some other investors, it would work great. But the reason I even bring it up to you is that one, I had not as many exit strategies walking into it. And I looked at that up front, and it made me re-examine the deal to the point where I said, you know what, this one probably doesn't work for me. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the show.